Okay, so we're continuing to position corals. Just a quick point about the colour of corals. You see, this guy's got a porous quite green. A lot of corals, if there's excessive iron trace in the water, iron trace element, it will tend to send corals green. This guy's naturally green, but too much iron or excessive iron in the water will turn them green. Another colour change effect that you get on corals is if you have too much heat, if the tank gets too hot, you get coral bleaching occur, and that's where the corals expel their algae that give them the colour, and they become white. And sometimes people fail to realise cause and effect when they lose their corals through a heat event occurring in their tank, because there's a delay. If it's only a marginal increase in temperature, say 28 to 30 degrees in a reasonably high nutrient reef tank, and you want to keep your nutrient down low to protect the corals from this sort of damage. But 28, 30 degrees can give you a coral bleaching event where the corals don't actually turn white for maybe 3 or 4 weeks after the event. And then they can live on for another 3 or 4 or 6 or even 8 weeks before they all start dying off. So sometimes it's like 9 weeks since the event and the loss of the corals. And at that stage, sometimes people don't recognise the fact that it all started from the fact that the tank got too warm. So there's some of the things about corals and their colour. Different trace elements can give them different colours. So corals will reflect different colours according to the trace element distribution in the water. So an excess of particular trace elements, like I mentioned with iron, for instance, can turn them green. Other trace elements can give you a different colour effect on different corals. And occasionally corals, and particularly anemones, can expel their zooxanthellae that give them the colour and absorb a new colony of symbiotic algae into the anemone or into the coral and change colour that way. Because where the colour's coming from is actually from the symbiotic algae. And what this symbiotic algae is doing is it's gaining energy from the light, and it's combining that with the nutrient in the water, and it's providing nutrient for the coral. So it's like almost like a small algae farm operating in a symbiotic way for the actual coral. So it's taking light and nutrient and using those to feed the coral. So it's benefiting the coral. So that's how come the corals are actually coloured up. They're from the actual algae. So we need to maintain water conditions that are friendly to the algae and benefit it, so the corals remain nice and bright, maintain the right trace element balance in the water so the colours are actually there, and prevent the tank from getting too hot, because if it gets too warm, the corals will bleach, and that is most particularly the case if you've got high phosphate or nitrate levels in your tank and you've got the high temperature. The two of those things coming together produce a bleaching event, such as we see, for instance, on the Barrier Reef. Runoff typically from sugarcane farms, agricultural runoff puts nutrient into the water. Different warm currents and to some extent global warming can contribute to the warming of the water itself, and the two collide. You've got high nutrient, you've got warm water, you get coral bleaching. It can happen in your home tank. Very good reason for having a chiller on the tank to guarantee you that in summer you're not going to have bleached corals and your tank's going to survive it. I was once called out to a lady's tank to explain to her how come all her corals had gone white and died. I got a fairly heavy clue about that when I arrived there, because she had actual wax candelabras sitting on a mantelpiece, and the candles had actually melted in the heat and were all bent like bananas. So I knew that she'd had a heat event before I even looked at the tank, and the corals told me that was the case because they'd all bleached and they were in the process of dying some 6 to 8 weeks after the heat event that gave her a very high temperature inside her house.